This presentation explores the sacred beliefs of Aboriginal Australian peoples. These are not just stories, but a living spiritual tradition of immense depth and complexity. Viewer respect for this ancient culture is appreciated. Before the first stone of the pyramids was laid, before the Epic of Gilgamesh was ever written, before humanity even conceived of farming, a story was being told on the continent of Australia. It is the oldest continuous story in human history, passed down through at least 2,500 generations, for an almost unimaginable 65,000 years. And this story makes a claim so profound it challenges our very understanding of reality. It says that the world you see around you, the ground beneath your feet, the sky above your head, even your own consciousness, is not the real world. It is merely a shadow, a faint temporary echo of a truer, more powerful reality that exists just beyond our senses. A reality that dreamed our universe into existence. And one day it may choose to dream it away. So the question that has been guarded for 65 millennia is this: what are the rules of the dream? And what happens to us when the dreamer finally wakes up? This is the story of the Dreamtime. To even begin to understand it, we have to discard our own concepts of time. For us, time is a straight line. A past we can't return to, a present we inhabit, and a future that hasn't happened yet. But for the first peoples of Australia, this is an illusion. The true reality, the dreaming, is not a time in the past. It is not a creation story that happened once and is now over. It is an eternal, unceasing everywhen. It is happening right now. It is a parallel dimension, a landscape of pure creative energy that coexists with our own, constantly shaping and sustaining everything we perceive. The laws of physics, the cycle of life and death, the very essence of what it means to be alive, all flow from this hidden realm. We are living inside a story that is still being told. Imagine if you can a state before existence, before light, before sound, before shape or form. There was no sun, no moon, no earth, no sky. There was only a cold, flat, dark and silent nothingness. A featureless plane stretching into an endless, empty infinity. The potential for everything existed, but nothing was real. It was a world asleep. But beneath the surface of this barren crust, something was stirring. Deep within the cold earth, powerful, supernatural beings lay dormant. They were not gods in the way we might think of them, they were something more fundamental. They were the raw, untamed energies of creation itself, the ancestral beings. And for eons they slept. Then, for a reason beyond our comprehension, they began to wake up. One by one they broke through the silent crust of the earth, emerging into the darkness. They were titanic forces of nature taking physical form. Some were colossal serpents, their scales shimmering with all the colors of the yet-to-be-created rainbow. Others were giant kangaroos, their movements shaking the very foundations of the void. There were bird-like creators, human-like shapeshifters, and beings of pure energy that defy any description. As they awoke, they brought with them the first light, the first sound, the first life. The silent, dark plain was suddenly alive with immense, world-shaping power. And they began to travel. As these ancestors moved across the barren land, they didn't just walk on it, they created it. Their very actions sculpted reality. A great serpent, Ngaliot, slithered from a waterhole, and the path he carved became the mighty rivers. Where he rested, he created deep pools and billabongs. He was a being of immense power, both a creator and a destroyer. His breath could bring life-giving rain or devastating cyclones. Two kangaroo men, the Tingari, journeyed for thousands of miles. Where they dug for water, springs and wells appeared. Where they fought a monstrous beast, their struggle threw up massive mountain ranges. The imprint of their feet left permanent salt pans and clay flats. But they didn't just create the physical world. As they traveled, they sang. This is perhaps the most critical concept to grasp. The world was not simply made. It was sung into existence. Every step an ancestor took, every action they performed, was accompanied by a song. This song was not just music. It was the vibrational code of creation. The lyrics described the mountains, the rivers, the rocks, and the trees as they were being formed. The melody and rhythm were the very laws of nature, the blueprint for life itself. A particular note might bring forth a species of plant. A specific verse could define the behavior of an animal. These songs became woven into the landscape, forever linking a specific place to a specific creative event. These paths the ancestors walked, these trails of song, are known as songlines or dreaming tracks. Think of them as a celestial map, not of stars but of creation itself, laid out across the entire continent of Australia. For tens of thousands of years, Aboriginal people could navigate vast, featureless deserts by singing the songs. The song acts as a map because the lyrics describe the landscape ahead, but it's also a history book, telling the story of how that landscape was created, and it's a legal document, defining the laws and social structures for the people who live there. To walk the songline is to walk in the footsteps of the ancestors. To sing the song is to become a co-creator, to tap into the eternal power of the dreaming and help sustain the world. It is the ultimate fusion of geography, spirituality, and memory. And when the ancestors' journeys were done, when the world was fully formed and sung into being, they did not leave. They did not ascend to a heaven or depart to another realm. Instead, they became the world they had created. One great ancestor laid down to rest and became Uluru, the monumental red rock at the heart of the continent. The Rainbow Serpent coiled itself into a permanent waterhole, its spirit forever present in the life-giving water. The kangaroo men transformed into specific rock formations, their spirits forever watching over the land they shaped. This is why, in Aboriginal belief, the land is not a resource to be owned or exploited. It is alive. It is sacred. Every rock, every river, every tree is a physical manifestation of a spiritual being. It is the living body of the ancestors. The land is a library of ancient law, a cathedral of immense spiritual power, and a direct physical connection to the eternal moment of creation. To damage the land is to desecrate the sacred. To lose the songs is to lose the map of reality itself, to risk the entire world unraveling and slipping back into the silent, featureless nothingness from which it came. The ancestors had created a perfect, vibrant world, infused with their own life force. But their work was not yet complete. The mountains, rivers, plants, and animals had all been sung into existence. Now it was time to create the final piece of their masterpiece, a being capable of understanding the songs, of upholding the law, and of keeping the connection to the dreaming alive. They were about to create the first humans, and in doing so, they would set in motion a story of law, of purpose, and of a profound responsibility that would echo for 65,000 years into the future. From the very earth they had sung into existence, the ancestral beings gathered the raw materials for their final, greatest creation. In some stories, they scooped handfuls of rich, red clay from a riverbank, mixing it with water in their own spiritual essence. In others, they chipped away at a cliff face, carving figures from the living rock. And in still others, they found two unformed, sleeping lumps of potential lying dormant beneath the soil, waiting for a catalyst. Whatever the substance, the process was one of intimate connection. This wasn't a distant, detached act of creation. It was a shaping, a molding, a breathing of life into the land itself. They weren't creating something separate from the world. They were making the world aware of itself. As the first eyes opened, they didn't see a landscape. They saw their own body, their own flesh, their very source. The mountains were their bones, the rivers their veins, the wind their breath. They were a part of the country, and the country was a part of them. But to be human was to be more than just alive. It was to have purpose. And so, the ancestors did not simply create and depart. They stayed. They walked among their creations and they taught them. They didn't hand down a set of stone tablets or a written book of rules. They gave them something far more profound, something that would live inside them and in the land itself. They gave them the law. This wasn't law as we might think of it, a set of prohibitions and punishments. This was an intricate, all-encompassing blueprint for existence. The law dictated how to find water, how to track a kangaroo, and which plants were medicine. But it also dictated how you spoke to your mother-in-law, who you could marry, and how to share food so that the entire community would always be provided for. It was a social, ecological, and spiritual instruction manual, woven into a single, unbreakable whole. The law taught that every single thing in creation was connected. The actions of a single person could ripple out and affect the health of the clan, the behavior of the animals, and the flow of the seasons. To break the law was not just a crime against another person. It was an act of disharmony against the entire cosmos, a dissonance in the great song of creation. To ensure this delicate balance was maintained, the ancestors gave each person, each family, and each clan a totem. A totem is a specific plant, animal, or natural feature that serves as a spiritual emblem, a direct, personal link back to the dreaming. You didn't choose your totem. Your totem chose you. It was your ancestor, your sibling, your spiritual twin. If your totem was the black cockatoo, you were of the black cockatoo mob. You had a sacred, lifelong duty to that bird. You were its custodian. This meant you had to learn everything about it. Its habits, its food, its song, its breeding cycle. You were forbidden from hunting it, except for specific ceremonial purposes. Your responsibility was to ensure its survival, to protect its habitat, and to perform the ceremonies that would guarantee its abundance. In return, the black cockatoo looked after you, its spirit guiding and protecting you. The same was true for the kangaroo people, the honey ant people, the river people, and the rock people. Every group was a custodian for a piece of the puzzle. Together, they formed a network of interlocking responsibilities that cared for every single aspect of the environment. It was the ultimate system of ecological balance, where humanity wasn't the master of nature, but its caretaker, woven inextricably into the fabric of life. The law wasn't about ownership of the land. It was about responsibility to the land. But how could this vast, complex system of law and kinship be remembered without writing? How could it be passed down through tens of thousands of years, across a continent the size of the United States? The ancestors' solution was pure genius. They embedded all of this knowledge directly into the landscape itself. As the great creator beings moved across the barren land in the dreaming, they weren't just walking. With every step, every action, they were singing the world into existence. The path they traveled is known as a dreaming track, or a songline. When the Rainbow Serpent slithered from a waterhole and carved a great river, she sang the river into being. The words of her song describe the river's twists and turns, the location of sacred sites along its banks, the types of fish that live in its waters, and the laws associated with its use. The song is a map. It's a story. It's a legal charter. To travel the land, you would sing the song of that particular songline. The melody would rise and fall with the contours of the hills. The rhythm would match the landmarks, a particular rock formation, a grove of trees, a waterhole. By singing the song, you could navigate across hundreds, even thousands of miles of what might seem like featureless terrain to an outsider. You weren't just following a map. You were reenacting the creative journey of the ancestor. You were walking in their footsteps, seeing the world through their eyes, and reaffirming your place within it. These songlines crisscross the entire continent like a spiritual nervous system. Where they intersect, great ceremonies are held. Knowledge is exchanged. Different language groups whose songs might be in different tongues could still share the journey, because the rhythm, the melody, and the land itself were the common language. A person's identity was tied to the songlines they had the right to sing. It was their heritage, their inheritance, their library of knowledge written not on paper, but on the very face of Australia. To bring all of this together, the law, the totems, the songlines, the ancestors taught the first people the most important practice of all, ceremony. Ceremony is the engine of the dreaming. It is the moment when the past, present, and future collapse into one. Through specific songs, intricate dances, and sacred art painted on bodies and on rock walls, humans could actively participate in the ongoing work of creation. These weren't performances for an audience. They were acts of immense spiritual power. When the kangaroo men danced the kangaroo dance, they weren't just imitating the animal. They became the spirit of the kangaroo, their movements ensuring its health and proliferation. When a story was told and a song was sung, it wasn't just a retelling of a myth. It was a re-energizing of the creative event, pouring life force back into the land and keeping the connection to the dreaming vibrant and strong. The ancestors showed them how to mix ochre from the earth to create paint, how to chant the ancient words, and how to move their bodies to honor their totems. They established the rules for these ceremonies, ensuring the sacred knowledge would be passed from elder to initiate, unchanged for all time. They were giving humanity a profound tool, the ability to maintain the balance of the world. The creation wasn't finished. It was now in their hands to sustain. The ancestors had laid the foundation, but now it was humanity's turn to build, to remember and to sing. And with this great transfer of responsibility, the stage was set for the first great test of the law, a drama of jealousy, consequence, and transformation that would forever shape the relationship between the sun, the moon, and the people of the earth. In the heart of the first camp, where the ancestors walked as people, lived a woman named Wuryu Pranali. She was the Sun Woman, and it was her sacred duty to carry a great torch of burning stringy bark across the world each day. When she woke in the east, she would light her torch from the embers of her campfire, paint her body with red ochre, and begin her long walk to the west. The light from her torch was the daylight. The warmth from her body was the sun's heat that ripened the fruit and warmed the backs of the lizards on the rocks. She was diligent, she was constant, and her journey was the rhythm of life itself. Her husband was Japra, the moon man. His light was different. It was a soft, silvery glow, a gentle comfort against the absolute dark of the night. Where Wuryu Pranali's light was for work and for life, Japra's was for stories, for ceremony, for the quiet contemplation that comes after the heat of the day has passed. They were a balance, the brilliant fire and the gentle glow, the keeper of the day and the guardian of the night. Their relationship was meant to be a reflection of this perfect cosmic harmony, an embodiment of the law that held everything in its proper place. But the earth was still new, and the hearts of the ancestors were still capable of turmoil. The law, this intricate web of kinship and responsibility, was more than just a set of rules. It was a living, breathing system that ensured the survival and harmony of all creation. It dictated who you could love, who you must protect, and who you were forbidden from desiring. These were not arbitrary restrictions. They were the very threads that wove the social fabric together, preventing chaos and ensuring that every person had a clear place and purpose within the clan. To break these kinship laws was to pull a thread that could unravel the entire tapestry of existence. And Japra the Moon Man pulled that thread. He looked upon one of Wuryu Pranali's own sisters, a woman who, by the law, was utterly forbidden to him. He saw her in the gentle light of his own moonbeams, and a desire grew in his heart that was a direct defiance of the sacred order. He acted on this desire, choosing a moment of personal gratification over an eternity of cosmic balance. It was a secret act done in the shadows, but in a world where every action was connected, where every being was part of the whole, there are no true secrets. The betrayal was a stone dropped into a still pond, and the ripples were destined to reach every shore. When Wuryu Pranali returned from her long journey in the west, extinguishing her torch and preparing for her rest, she felt the change. The air in the camp was different. The harmony was broken. The truth came to her not as a spoken word, but as a deep, intuitive knowing, a coldness in the air where there should have been warmth. She saw the guilt in Japra's averted eyes and the shame in her sister's face. The pain of this betrayal was immense, a personal wound that cut to her very spirit. But it was more than that. It was an offense against the law, an act of cosmic vandalism. Her duty, as the Sun Woman, was not just to carry the light, but to uphold the order that the light revealed. Her grief turned instantly to a righteous, burning fury. This was not a domestic squabble. This was the first great test of the universe's newfound structure. If this transgression was allowed to stand, the law would mean nothing. Chaos would reign. Seizing a large stone axe, a tool for shaping the world, she let out a cry that shook the mountains. Japra, seeing the fire of the sun's core in her eyes, turned and fled. And so began the first great chase. It was a pursuit that tore across the still-forming continent. They ran over plains that were soft and muddy, and their giant footsteps became the lakes and waterholes that dot the landscape today. Japra, in his terror, scrambled up a massive termite mound, which in that moment was transformed into a great mountain. Wuryu Pranali, in her relentless pursuit, followed, her fiery anger carving canyons and gorges into the earth's crust with every powerful stride. He fled to the coast, to the very edge of the world, and tried to hide among the mangroves. But there is nowhere to hide from the sun. She found him there, cowering at the place where the land meets the sea. There was no more running. The confrontation was at hand. This was not a fight born of hatred, but of necessity. It was the universe correcting itself. With the stone axe, Wuryu Pranali struck her husband. She did not strike to kill, for the law was about balance, not annihilation. She struck him to mark him, to permanently scar him with the consequence of his actions. The axe bit deep into his side and his back, wounding him terribly. As he fell, bleeding his pale, silvery light onto the sand, he knew his time on the earth was over. He had broken the sacred trust of his people and the land itself. Shamed and in agony, Japra began to climb. He climbed into the sky, seeking to escape the earth he had betrayed and the righteous fury of his wife. He pulled himself up into the blackness of the night, thinking he could find refuge there. Wuryu Pranali watched him go. Her anger began to subside, replaced by a profound and eternal sorrow. Her place was no longer with him. Her duty was to her journey, to the people, to the light. And so she too ascended into the heavens. She relit her great bark torch and began her journey once more, not from a campfire on the earth, but from the eastern edge of the sky. Her chase was no longer one of vengeance, but one of cosmic necessity. She must forever pursue him across the celestial stage, a constant reminder of the order he had disrupted. She is the sun, forever chasing the moon across the sky. Jabra, the moon man, still bears the wounds of that day. As he moves through the night sky, we see him turn. We see the deep gashes from his wife's axe. For 2 weeks he slowly turns away, showing us his wounded back until he is thin and disappears into the darkness, a sliver of his former self. Then for 2 weeks, he slowly begins to heal, turning back towards the earth, growing full and bright again. His cycle, the phases of the moon, is an eternal monthly reminder of transgression, consequence, and the slow, painful process of recovery. Their story is etched into the sky, a daily and nightly drama that plays out above us all. It is the story of how the day and night were given their eternal rhythm, born from a moment of passion that broke the most sacred law. It established that no one, not even a celestial ancestor, is above the cosmic order. And for the people on the earth below, looking up, it was the first great lesson. Every action has a consequence, and some of those consequences are so vast, they can change the face of the sky itself. And just as the sky became a canvas for cosmic law, the earth below was about to be shaped by a power even more ancient, a power sleeping just beneath the surface. Before the mountains, before the rivers, before the first whisper of wind through the trees, the land was flat. It was a silent, featureless plain, stretching out under the newly patterned sky. And deep within the crust of this sleeping earth, another great ancestor dreamed. This was Ngaliad, Yurlungur, Bite, the Rainbow Serpent. Imagine a being of unimaginable scale, coiled in a slumber that had lasted for eons. Its body was not of flesh and blood, but of the very essence of creation. Its scales shimmered with the colors of the yet-to-be-seen rainbow, its form containing the potential for every river, every valley, every drop of water that would ever exist. For a time that has no name, it lay dormant, the immense energy of life held in perfect, silent stillness. Then something shifted. A tremor, not of the earth but of intention. The time for sleeping was over. The time for creation had come. The Rainbow Serpent began to stir. Deep underground, the rocks groaned and the soil shifted as its colossal form uncoiled. It pushed upwards, breaking through the flat, barren crust of the world. As its head emerged, the land itself fractured and split. The dust of ages rose in a cloud, and for the first time, a shadow fell upon the earth that was not cast from the sky. The serpent heaved its massive body from the deep, and its journey began. It did not move with malice or haste, but with the slow, deliberate purpose of a sculptor before a block of marble. Where its body dragged across the plain, it carved deep, winding gouges into the earth. Where it coiled to rest, it pressed great, circular depressions into the ground. It moved with a rhythmic, hypnotic power, its shimmering scales scraping against stone, its passage a song of friction and formation. And as it moved, it called, a deep, resonant call that vibrated through the very heart of the world. It called to the water that was hidden deep within the earth, the lifeblood of the planet. And the water answered. It welled up from the deep, bubbling to the surface, filling the tracks the serpent had made. These were the first rivers. They snaked and twisted across the land, mirroring the path of their creator, their currents the memory of its movement. The great depressions it had made became the first lakes and waterholes, still, deep and reflective, holding the image of the sky above. The world was no longer flat and silent. It now had contours, depths, and the sound of moving water. The Rainbow Serpent had given the land its shape, its bones. But the world was still empty. Other ancestral beings lay sleeping, encased in the earth as formless spirits, waiting for a call. As the serpent traveled, its presence was a catalyst. It passed over a spot where the spirits of the kangaroos were dreaming. It nudged them and they burst forth, taking their shape and form, hopping across the newly formed hills for the first time. It slid past a patch of earth holding the essence of the barramundi, and as it passed, they swam to life in the new rivers. But the serpent was more than just an awakener, it was a lawgiver. Its journey was not random, it was a lesson. It observed the newly awakened beings. It watched their interactions, their instincts, their first tentative steps in a new world. And it saw that creation without order was simply chaos. So, the serpent began to establish the law. This wasn't a law written in a book. It was a law etched into the landscape itself. A law that governed the relationships between all living things, the land, and the spiritual realm. The stories tell of two bickering ancestors who refused to stop their squabbling. The serpent came upon them, its massive head rising from a waterhole, its rainbow scales shimmering with an awesome power. It commanded them to live in peace, to respect the harmony of the land. But they ignored the warning, their egos greater than their wisdom. As a consequence of their disrespect for the law, the serpent transformed them. They were turned to stone, their arguing forms frozen forever as two pillars of rock, a permanent reminder to all who would pass that way. Harmony is sacred and disrespect has a price. The land itself became the ultimate history book and the ultimate rule book. Every rock outcropping, every strangely shaped mountain, every river bend held a story, a lesson, a piece of the law. To walk the land was to read the law. This power of the serpent was absolute. It was the source of all life, but it was also the ultimate enforcer. Those who followed the law, who respected the land and their kin, were rewarded. They were given their totem, their sacred connection to a particular animal or plant, their place within the great web of existence. But those who transgressed, who were greedy or violent or disrespectful, faced the serpent's judgment. They were swallowed, drowned, or turned to stone, their physical forms becoming a part of the very landscape they had failed to honor. After its great work of shaping, awakening, and judging was done, the rainbow serpent did not leave. A being of such power could never truly depart. It retreated. It slid back into the deepest waterholes it had created, its spirit forever residing in the life-giving water. It is said that its essence arches across the sky after a storm, a visible reminder of its presence and its promise of life and renewal. The rainbow is not just light refracting through water. It is the serpent looking down upon its creation. This makes the rainbow serpent a being of profound duality. It is the creator, the life-giver, the source of the rains that nourish the earth. But it is also the destroyer, the bringer of floods that can wash the land clean, the judge whose power is final. It represents the sacred, terrifying, and life-sustaining power of water itself. To this day, certain waterholes are treated with immense respect and caution. They are not just bodies of water, they are the homes of the serpent. To disturb them is to risk awakening a power that shaped the world, a power that demands adherence to the law. The land was now shaped, the water now flowed, the first animals had been awakened, and a sacred, unbreakable law had been etched into the very stone and soil of the continent. But the world was still missing its caretakers. The ancestors had created a perfect stage, a kinship country where every element was related, every feature had a purpose. Now it needed the actors who would live out the drama, who would be entrusted with upholding this sacred law. The time was coming for the creation of the most complex and most responsible of all the beings, humanity. The question was, how would they be formed, and how would they learn to read the great story written all around them? The answer, like everything in the Dreamtime, was not singular. It was a story told in 1,000 different ways across 1,000 different landscapes, yet all humming with the same essential truth. The creation of humanity was not an afterthought. It was the final, resonant chord in the symphony of existence. The ancestors, their great shaping work nearly complete, gathered the very essence of the new world. They took the rich, red earth from the heart of the continent, the dark, fertile mud from the riverbanks, the fine white sand of the coasts, and even the unformed essence of the clouds themselves. In some stories, the first people were lying dormant, just beneath the surface of the earth, like seeds waiting for the first rain. The great ancestors walked the land, and with the tap of their sacred staffs or the power of their song, they called these sleeping forms to rise. They emerged from the ground, blinking in the new sun, their bodies still caked with the clay of their birth. They were not yet fully human, but something in between spirit and flesh, earth and consciousness. In other traditions, the ancestors physically sculpted them. The rainbow serpent, having carved the rivers, used the leftover clay to form the first man and woman. The Wangina, the cloud and rain spirits of the Kimberley, painted the first people onto the rock walls of caves, and then breathed life into their portraits, allowing them to step out of the rock and into the world. Byame, the Sky Father in the southeast, descended to a world of flat, silent earth and with immense care, molded the first humans, giving them the laws they would need to live. But what truly separated these new beings from the kangaroos and the crocodiles? It wasn't just their shape, it was a spark. The ancestors looked upon their creations and gave them the final, most potent gifts: language, and with it, story. They gave them the ability to not just see a rock, but to know its history. To not just hear the wind, but to understand the song it was singing. They were given a mind that could travel back to the beginning, a spirit that could connect with the ancestors, and a voice that could carry the law forward. They were given consciousness. This consciousness came with a profound, unbreakable connection to the world they had just entered. This was the key to their survival, the answer to how they would learn to read the great story written around them. Each new person and each family line or clan was given a totem. This wasn't just a mascot or a favorite animal. A totem was a direct, spiritual lineage to one of the ancestor beings. If your totem was the kangaroo, you were of the kangaroo. The kangaroo ancestor was your kin, your direct ancestor. You were responsible for its preservation, for its ceremonies, for its continued existence. You would not hunt it for sport, and you would honor its life. In return, the kangaroo spirit would protect you, guide you, and define your place in the universe. Through these totems, all of creation was woven together in a complex web of family. The emu people were related to the goanna people, and both had obligations to the honey ant people. The entire ecosystem was a family tree, and humanity was not at the top, but an integral part, tasked with understanding and maintaining the relationships between all its members. This was the foundation of the law. But how would they navigate this world? How would they remember these intricate laws and relationships? The ancestors provided a map, not of ink and paper, but of song and story. They created the song lines. As the ancestor beings had traveled across the barren land in the beginning, their every footstep, their every action, their every breath had created a note in a grand song. Where the Rainbow Serpent rested, a waterhole was formed, and that event became a verse. Where the emu ancestor fought the goanna, a mountain range was thrust up, and that battle became a chorus. These songlines, also known as dreaming tracks, crisscrossed the entire continent. They were invisible pathways of memory and music. By singing the song, you could literally walk in the footsteps of the ancestors. The lyrics of the song were a precise map of the terrain. A change in melody might indicate a turn in the path. A certain word might describe a uniquely shaped rock, signaling a place to find water. The rhythm might tell you the distance to the next sacred site. It was a memory palace, a living atlas, a spiritual GPS that connected every tribe and every landmark across thousands of miles. A person from the desert could, in theory, travel all the way to the ocean simply by learning the verses of the song from the neighboring clan, and the next, passing the story along like a baton in a continental relay race. This was how the story of creation would be remembered. It wasn't written in a book to be put on a shelf. It was etched into the land itself. The land was the book. The mountains were the chapters, the rivers were the sentences, the stars were the illustrations. And humanity was given the sacred duty of being the librarians of this living, breathing text. To ensure this knowledge was never lost, the first ceremonies were created. The ancestors taught the first people the dances that mirrored their own creative acts. They taught them the songs that kept the fabric of reality humming. They showed them how to paint their stories onto rock and onto their own bodies, using the ochres and clays of the earth. These were not just artistic expressions. A ceremony was a technology. By reenacting the stories of the Dreamtime, they weren't just remembering creation. They were participating in it. The ceremony ensured the seasons would turn, the animals would procreate, and the life-giving rains would fall. It was an act of cosmic maintenance. Humanity was now fully formed, fully equipped. They possessed the consciousness to understand the world, the totemic connections to find their place within it, the song lines to navigate it, and the ceremonies to sustain it. They were no longer simply creatures of the earth. They were its custodians. An immense and sacred responsibility now rested on their shoulders. They were the memory of the world, tasked with holding the story, singing the song, and walking the path laid down for them since the first dawn. The question now was, how would they carry this weight as they began to spread out, to populate the vast, wild, and beautiful continent that was their home? The answer was not written in a book, or carved into a single stone. It was written into the land itself. The ancestral beings, in their epic journeys, didn't just create the world. They mapped it. They sang it. Every river they crossed, Every mountain they raised, every waterhole they dug became a verse in a celestial song. And as the first people began to move, to explore, they found they weren't walking into an unknown wilderness. They were following a story. They were tracing the melody. These paths are known as songlines or dreaming tracks. But to call them a path is like calling the internet a wire. It barely scratches the surface of what they truly are. A songline is a map, a Bible, and a legal code all woven into one. Imagine walking across America from New York to California. But instead of a GPS, you have a song. The rhythm of the song dictates your pace. The lyrics describe the landscape ahead. A change in melody warns of a mountain range. A specific verse tells you where to find water. The chorus is the story of how the great valley you're standing in was carved by a giant, sleeping serpent in the Dreamtime. By singing the song, you are not just navigating. You are participating in the act of creation itself. You are walking in the literal spiritual footsteps of the ancestors. The ground beneath your feet is not just dirt and rock. It is a sacred text, and your journey is a pilgrimage. Your voice, singing the ancient words, reaffirms the existence of every feature around you. It keeps the world from dissolving back into the formless void it came from. This wasn't just memory, it was maintenance. A cosmic, ongoing responsibility. As the people spread, they didn't just take the story with them. They became custodians of a piece of it. A particular group might live in the lands created by the emu ancestors' journey. Their identity, their very being, was tied to that story. They were the emu people. Their law, their ceremonies, their social structure, it all flowed from their section of the emu songline. They were responsible for keeping that part of the story alive, for preserving the verses that corresponded to their hills, their creeks, their sacred sites. Their neighbors, a day's walk to the east, might be the honey ant people. Their land was sung into existence by a different ancestor. They had their own verses, their own ceremonies. But here is the genius of the system. The emu songline didn't just stop at the border of their land. It continued, crossing into the territory of the honey ant people, and beyond. And the honey ant songline might cross through the lands of the emu people. The continent became a vast, intricate web of these intersecting storylines. A tapestry of music and meaning. No single group held the entire story. No one clan knew the whole song. Your piece of the puzzle was sacred, but it was incomplete. To understand the full journey of the emu ancestor, you had to connect with your neighbors, who held the next part of its story. This fostered a profound, spiritually mandated interdependence. Trade, diplomacy, marriage, and ceremony weren't just practical matters. They were the way you pieced together the full story of creation. They were the way you understood the mind of the creator spirits. This is the reality behind the Western misunderstanding of walkabout. It was never aimless wandering. It was a journey with a purpose deeper than we can easily comprehend. It was traveling the songlines, sometimes for hundreds of miles, to visit the sacred sites that were the physical manifestation of your creation story. It was to meet with the custodians of the next verse, to exchange knowledge, to sing the songs together, to ensure the great, continent-spanning narrative remained intact. It was a sacred duty to walk the earth, to keep the song alive, and in doing so, keep the creator spirits, and the world they created, present and real. This system of belief, this law, was known as the Chukirpa. The Chukirpa was the ultimate authority. It wasn't a set of rules handed down by a chief. It was the story of the land itself. It dictated who you could marry, based on complex kinship systems that prevented inbreeding and created strong social alliances. It dictated how resources were managed, ensuring that a particular waterhole or patch of yams was never overused. The law was absolute because it was not man-made. It was the direct, unchanging legacy of the Dreamtime. To break the law was to disrespect the ancestors, to endanger the community, and to risk unraveling the very fabric of reality. So, as humanity began to populate the continent, they were not a single monolithic culture. They were thousands of distinct groups speaking hundreds of different languages. From the dense rainforests of the north to the searing deserts of the center, each group had its own unique identity, its own local flavor of the dreaming. They were the saltwater people, the river people, the mountain people. Each had their own ancestors, their own stories, their own art. But they were all connected. They were all reading from the same great book, even if they were responsible for different chapters. The songlines were the threads that stitched them all together. An individual might be born with multiple dreamings, or spiritual inheritances. The dreaming of their father's clan, the dreaming of their mothers, and the dreaming of the very place where they were conceived. Their soul was a nexus, a meeting point of different songlines, giving them a complex and layered identity and a set of unique responsibilities to different stories, different lands, and different peoples. This was a society built not on empires and armies, but on shared narrative and spiritual geography. Power was not about conquest but custodianship. Wealth was not measured in possessions, but in knowledge, the knowledge of the stories, the songs, the ceremonies. The land was not a resource to be owned or exploited. It was a family member, a living entity that you had a sacred duty to care for. And for a time this intricate balance held. The songs were sung, the journeys were made, and the law was respected. The people learned to live not just on the land, but with it, as an integral part of its ongoing creation story. They had found the answer to carrying the weight of creation. They carried it together, each group a vital voice in a continent-wide choir. But the Dreamtime was not a static, finished event. The ancestral spirits had shaped the world, but their power, their essence had not departed. It lingered, concentrated in sacred places. And just as there were benevolent creator ancestors, there were other forces too, beings of chaos, of mischief, of immense and terrifying power, who were not content to sleep forever beneath the earth. The law of the land had been established, but a new test was coming. A test of the law of the heart. This test would not come from a great battle of gods, or a war between the ancestors. It would come, as the most profound tests always do, from the simple, unavoidable, and sacred act of living. It would come with two sisters. They were known as the Wawalag. They journeyed from the far north, two women walking across a land still soft and new, a world still humming with the echo of its own creation. The older sister had already borne a child, and the younger was still heavy with her own. They were the embodiment of the future, carrying the generations within them. As they walked, they named the animals, the plants, the places they saw. They were not just travelers, they were participants in the ongoing act of creation, weaving their own thread into the great tapestry of the dreaming. Their songs were the songs of life, of kinship, of the law that Bayami had woven into the very fabric of existence. They were humanity, in its infancy, learning the rhythm of the world. Their journey was long, and eventually, they came to a place in Arnhem Land, a land of vast floodplains and snaking rivers. They were tired. They needed a place to rest, to make camp, and for the younger sister to give birth. They found a waterhole, a tranquil place named Mirimina. It was a sacred place, but in their weariness and in the urgency of childbirth, they did not fully perceive its power. They built a shelter of paperbark, and there the younger sister's labor began. And here the law of the land met the law of the body. The unavoidable, sacred blood of childbirth flowed from the sisters. A drop of it, a single potent drop, fell from the older sister's hand and trickled into the clear water of the billabong. It was an accident, an inevitability of life. But the universe does not always distinguish between intent and action. The law is not a moral code, it is a cosmic one. Like gravity, it simply is. And that single drop of blood was a profound violation. For this waterhole was not just water. It was the sleeping place of one of the most ancient and powerful beings of the dreaming, a being of immense size and primordial energy, the great python Yurlungur, the Rainbow Serpent. Down in the cool, silent darkness at the bottom of the pool, something stirred. The blood, a symbol of life and creation on the surface, was a pollutant in this sacred space, a disruption of the established order. It was a signal, a scent, a violation that could not be ignored. Yurlungur, who had slept for an age, began to uncoil. The water in the pool began to tremble, then to bubble. The ground itself seemed to groan as the immense creature began to rise. On the surface, the sisters felt the tremor. They looked at the waterhole and a deep instinctual fear gripped them. The sky, which had been clear, began to darken. A single, small cloud appeared directly overhead, and from it, a light rain began to fall. But this was no ordinary rain. It was the serpent's saliva, the harbinger of his awakening. Yurlungur's head broke the surface. It was a sight beyond comprehension. A head the size of a mountain, with eyes that held the coldness of the deep earth. As he rose, the water of the billabong rose with him, flooding the land, turning their small campsite into an island. The sky turned black. A storm of cataclysmic force erupted. Lightning, the flicking of Yurlungur's tongue, tore the sky apart. Thunder, the sound of his hissing, shook the very foundations of the world. The sisters were terrified. They were mothers, protectors. They knew this was a spiritual attack, a consequence of their presence. And so they did what the first people did when faced with the power of the dreaming. They danced. They sang. They performed the sacred ceremonies they knew, their voices rising in a desperate plea against the roar of the storm. They sang the songs of creation, of harmony, of their kinship with all living things. They were trying to remind the world and this angry spirit of the law of connection, of the balance they were a part of. For a moment, the storm seemed to hesitate. The serpent paused. It was the power of creation pushing back against the power of destruction. But it was not enough. The transgression was too great. The balance had been too severely disturbed. Yurlungur was not a being of malice. He was a being of pure, unbending law. He was an immune response to a wound in the sacred world. He lowered his massive head, his jaws opening wide, a cavern of darkness. He lunged first for the children, swallowing them whole. Then he came for the mothers. The younger sister, then the older, were consumed by the great serpent, their songs silenced, their light extinguished inside the primordial dark. The paperbark hut, their fire, all their belongings, everything was devoured. He swallowed their entire world. When it was done, the storm ceased. The floodwaters receded. The sky cleared. There was only silence. Yurlungur, his great belly swollen with the two women and their children, rose high into the air. He was a magnificent and terrifying sight, his scales shimmering with all the colors of the rainbow, a living bridge between the earth and the sky. He had restored order. He had cleansed the sacred site. The law had been upheld. But as he stood there, his head in the clouds, something began to happen. A deep, unsettling feeling stirred within the great serpent. He had consumed the women, the carriers of life. He had consumed the children, the embodiment of the future. He had swallowed his own kin, his own flesh and blood in the great family of the dreaming. In enforcing one law, he had broken another, more ancient law of kinship. The serpent, the ultimate enforcer of the sacred order, was now filled with the very source of its violation. He began to feel sick. The power he had consumed was now working against him from the inside. The songs of the sisters, though silenced, still echoed within him, a vibration of life that his ancient earthy form could not contain. The test of law had been met with a terrible verdict. But now a new trial was beginning, not on the land, but within the belly of the beast itself. The darkness inside the rainbow serpent was not an absence of light. It was a presence, a thick, crushing, and living entity. It pressed in from all sides, a pressure that wasn't just physical, but spiritual, seeking to dissolve form, to unmake creation and return it to a chaotic, churning potential. Sounds were muffled, distorted into low, guttural groans that were not heard with the ears, but felt in the bones, the sound of a god digesting reality. Bayami was adrift in a warm, viscous sea, a primordial soup of half-formed dreams and dissolved nightmares. Around him, ghostly shapes swirled in the gloom, the spirits of other beings, other creators who had, in their own time, transgressed the law. He saw the faint outline of a kangaroo spirit with stars for eyes, its form slowly unraveling. He felt the passing of a bird spirit whose wings were made of silent thunder, its cry now just a weak pulse in the suffocating fluid. They were all here. The failures, the rebels, the ones who had dared to shape the world without permission, now being unshaped themselves. They were a silent congregation of the damned, each one a fading echo of a forgotten creation. But the echo within Bayami was different. The song of his wife, the melody of the first woman, was not fading. It was a single, perfect note holding its own against the cacophony of dissolution. It was a pinpoint of order in the heart of chaos. It was law, but a different kind of law, not the rigid, ancient law of the land, but a new law born of love and creation itself. He clung to that vibration, that thread of sound, as a drowning man clings to a rope. It was his anchor in this formless sea. He realized then that the serpent had not just swallowed his body, it had swallowed his crime. It had consumed his act of creation, and in doing so, had brought the seed of that creation inside itself. The trial was not about punishment. It was about transformation. Could his creation, his law, survive inside the belly of the old law? Or would it be dissolved like all the others? He focused on the note, the memory of his wife's voice. He let it fill him, pushing back against the immense pressure. He was no longer just a creator of earth and stone. He had to become a creator of meaning, of purpose, in a place where none existed. Slowly, deliberately, he began to hum. It was a low, resonant sound, a counter-frequency to the groaning of the serpent. He hummed the note of his wife's song. At first, it was swallowed by the oppressive silence, a tiny flicker of defiance. But he persisted. He poured all of his being, all of his memory, all of his will into that single sound. And then a change. The swirling spirit of the kangaroo man paused its slow, entropic dance. Its starry eyes seemed to focus, just for a moment, on the source of the sound. The thunderbird spirit drifted closer, its form coalescing slightly, its silent wings finding a phantom current in the hum. Bayami was creating a center, a point of gravity in the formless void. The other spirits, drawn from their listless despair, began to gather. They were a silent audience at first, specters drawn to a single tiny flame in an endless night. They recognized the sound not as a melody, but as an idea, order, structure, a refusal to end. The hum grew stronger as Bayami's resolve hardened. It was more than a sound now, it was a shield. It pushed back the crushing, digestive pressure of the serpent, creating a small pocket of stability, a sanctuary in the belly of the beast. Within this bubble of sound, the spirits began to remember themselves. The kangaroo man's form solidified. The bird's wings regained their definition. A fish spirit whose scales had been melting into the mire now shimmered with a faint spectral light. They were not saved, not yet, but they were no longer dissolving. They were witnessing a new act of creation, happening not on the red earth, but in the very crucible of unmaking. Bayami, seeing them gather, seeing the hope rekindle in their phantom forms, knew what he had to do. He had to give them more than a sound, he had to give them a story. He began to chant, his voice weaving a new song from the thread of the old one. He sang of the red earth he had shaped. He sang of the cool water he had summoned. He sang of the woman he had made, of her voice, of the first sunrise they had shared. He was retelling the story of his creation, not as a boast but as a testament, a declaration that what is made with purpose and love cannot be so easily unmade. He was rebuilding his world, not with clay and water, but with memory and sound. And as he sang, the spirits listened. They remembered their own creations, their own moments of defiance and artistry. They remembered the feel of the wind they had called, the shape of the mountains they had raised. Bayami's song was not just his story. It became their story, the anthem of all creators. But this act of internal creation did not go unnoticed. Deep within its ancient, cosmic consciousness, the Rainbow Serpent felt a strange and alien sensation. It was a feeling it had not experienced in eons. Indigestion, a rebellion in its gut. This morsel, this creator spirit Bayami, was not dissolving. It was organizing. It was building a world inside of a world eater. A sharp, piercing pain like a shard of crystal lanced through the serpent's belly. The song was a discordant note in the serpent's own ancient rhythm. It was a law challenging the law. The great beast, which had been gliding serenely through the Dreamtime sky, a river of color and power, suddenly spasmed. It coiled in on itself, a galaxy-sized cramp twisting its stellar form. On the land below, the creatures looked up in terror. The calm, predictable rainbow that had stretched from horizon to horizon was now writhing like a wounded snake. It thrashed violently, its colors bleeding and churning, casting chaotic, terrifying strobes of light and shadow across the newly formed landscape. The mountains trembled. The rivers churned with mud. The very air vibrated with the serpent's agony. Inside, the spirits were thrown about like pebbles in a shaken jar. The sanctuary of sound Bayami had created was torn apart by the violent convulsions. The darkness pressed in again, the groaning of the serpent now a roar of pure, divine pain. Bayami fought to hold the song, to maintain the center, but it was like trying to light a candle in a hurricane. He could feel the serpent's immense power turning against him, its entire being focusing on this internal sickness, this point of resistance that refused to be digested. The pressure intensified 1,000-fold. The spirits cried out in silent terror as their forms began to fray once more. But Bayami's creation had already taken root. The memory of order of the song now existed within them. They were no longer just passive victims. They fought back, adding their own faint, spectral hums to his, trying to rebuild the shield. It was a battle of wills fought in the gut of a god. But the serpent's reaction was not just internal. In its torment, it lost control of its celestial flight. It stopped gliding. It stopped swimming through the sky. With a final, convulsive shudder that shook the very firmament of the Dreamtime, the Rainbow Serpent began to fall. It tumbled from the heavens, an apocalyptic meteor of myth and magic, plummeting back towards the world it had judged. For Bayami and the spirits trapped within, the prison was about to become a coffin, their defiance extinguished not by digestion, but by a cataclysmic impact that would shatter the world below and themselves along with it. The fall was not a fall at all. It was an uncreation, a violent reversal of ascent. The heavens, once a destination, were now a point of origin for a spear of impossible light and shadow. Down it came, the Rainbow Serpent, no longer a creature of majestic will but a prisoner of gravity, a celestial body condemned to die upon the world it sought to consume. The air screamed as it passed, superheating into a plasma sheath that burned with the colors of 1,000 sunsets. The very fabric of the sky tore open, and for a moment, the world below was bathed in a light it had never known, a terrible, beautiful, and final dawn. Inside the serpent's belly, the universe was chaos. Bayami and the spirits were thrown against the fleshy walls of their prison, the rhythmic beat of the serpent's heart now a frantic, percussive death rattle. There was no up or down, only a constant, crushing force that threatened to extinguish their immortal essence. They were trapped in the heart of a meteor, passengers on a voyage to oblivion. The serpent's own terror, a psychic scream that echoed through its being, was their only atmosphere. It knew what was coming. It had tasted the sky, and now it would taste the stone. It had swallowed the gods, and now it would be swallowed by the earth. The land below, ancient and flat, felt the coming doom. The air grew still. The waters of the nascent oceans pulled back from the shores, as if recoiling in fear. The ground itself began to hum, a low, resonant frequency that vibrated up through the roots of the world trees and into the very bones of the sleeping proto-creatures. A shadow fell across the continent, vast and swift, a blotting out of the sun that was not night, but something far more final. It was the shadow of God's own judgment falling back upon itself. Then came the impact. There is no word for the sound it made, for all sound was annihilated in an instant. It was a silence that deafened, a pressure wave that flattened mountains that did not yet exist. The serpent struck the earth not as a living thing, but as a projectile of cosmic force. The point of impact flash vaporized, turning solid ground into incandescent gas. The world cracked. The crust of the earth, that thin, fragile skin, shattered like a clay pot dropped from a great height. A ring of fire and molten rock expanded outwards at impossible speed, scouring the landscape clean. The shockwave ripped through the planet's core, a planetary convulsion that jolted the world on its very axis. Where the serpent's head struck, a colossal crater was gouged from the earth, its rim instantly thrusting upwards into jagged peaks that cooled into black, glassy stone. The land buckled and folded. Plains were violently thrust skyward, screaming under the strain, becoming immense mountain ranges in a matter of moments. Vast tracts of land collapsed downwards, forming deep valleys and chasms that would one day become the beds of mighty rivers. The serpent's body, miles long, did not simply land. It slapped against the tortured continent, a whip crack of unimaginable energy. Each point of contact was another cataclysm. Its colossal spine, striking the ground, became the Flinders Ranges. Its coiled tail, thrashing in its death throes, carved the winding path of the Murray River. The very ground liquefied, flowing like water before re-solidifying into alien shapes and twisted formations. The sky turned black with ejected earth and ash, plunging the world into a choking, absolute darkness pierced only by the hellish glow of magma bursting from the fresh wounds in the planet's skin. And inside, the prison broke. The impact that shattered the world also shattered the serpent. Its flesh, once a barrier stronger than any substance, was torn asunder. Bayami and the spirits were not gently released. They were violently expelled, blasted out into the maelstrom of fire, ash, and screaming wind. They were seeds of life thrown from the heart of a cosmic explosion. The force of the impact scattered them across the continent, flinging them into the newly formed mountains, the scorching deserts, and the dark, deep valleys. The Rainbow Serpent was dead, but its death was not an ending. It was a transformation. As its colossal body lay broken and bleeding across the ruined landscape, a new kind of creation began. Its life force, its potent, chaotic energy, bled out into the rock in the soil. Its blood, pooling in the great chasms it had carved, became the first rivers, not of water, but of pure creative essence. These channels would later fill with rain, but the memory of that first blood would forever flow within them, making the watercourses sacred. Its scales, once a shimmering armor of every color, were flaked off and scattered by the wind. They settled into the earth, becoming the veins of precious minerals, the fiery red of iron ore, the cool green of copper, the brilliant yellow of gold. The opals that shimmer with captured rainbows are said to be the serpent's tears, crystallized in the agony of its impact. The vibrant ochres, red, yellow, and white, used in sacred ceremony are the pigments of its skin, ground into the very clay of the earth, a permanent palette left behind by the fallen god. Its bones, vast and arching, did not decay. They became the rock formations, the great stone ribs of the land itself. Lurukatachuta, these are not mere rocks. They are the vertebrae of the serpent, the physical remnants of the Dreamtime, still radiating the immense power of the creature that was. The world was no longer a flat, featureless plain. It was now a landscape of memory, a geography of divine sacrifice. Every mountain, every river, every gorge was a scar left by the serpent's fall, and every scar held a story. Bayami, flung from the wreckage, came to rest in the heart of the darkness. He was weakened, his spirit bruised by the sheer violence of his release. The Creator awoke not in a garden but in a furnace. The air was thick with sulfur and ash, the ground beneath him still trembled with aftershocks, and the only light came from the rivers of lava that flowed like open wounds across the land. He was no longer a celestial being observing from above. He was on the ground, a survivor amidst the devastation he had, in his defiance, helped to unleash. He looked out upon a world remade by fire and trauma. It was a terrifying, chaotic, and violently beautiful landscape. And he was not alone. He could feel them. The other spirits, his brethren, scattered like dust in the wind. They too were awakening, dazed and untethered, their power now wild and raw, no longer bound by the serpent's flesh or Bayami's law. They were free, but it was the freedom of chaos, the liberty of a world without rules, born from an act of ultimate destruction. The first law had been broken. The first predator had been slain. But in its death, the Rainbow Serpent had given the world a new, more complex, and more dangerous inheritance. It had not just been a vessel of destruction, it had become the very source of the world's sacredness. Its body was the new temple. Its story was the new law, written not in words but in stone, water, and light. Bayami stood, his form coalescing in the fiery gloom, and understood. Creating life was only the beginning. Now he had to teach it how to live in a world that was itself the body of a dead and very powerful God. He gathered the first people, the ones he had shaped from the dust of Yai's final exhausted breath. They were still new, their eyes wide with the strangeness of being, their skin still learning the language of sun and wind. He led them not to a temple of stone or wood, but to the foot of a mountain, a jagged peak that was the upturned jawbone of the defeated god. He pointed to it, then to a river that was a vein, then to a cluster of stars that were the memory of a tear. He did not speak in words as we know them. He spoke in the rustle of leaves, in the pattern of light on water, in the resonant hum of the earth itself. The lesson was this: you are not on the land. You are the land. This world is not a resource to be used. It is a relative to be respected. It is your library, your law book, your ancestor, and your future child all at once. Every feature you see, from the smallest pebble to the highest peak, is a verse in the story of your creation. The world is a memory. To live, you must learn how to read it. But a memory so vast could overwhelm a mind so new. Humanity needed a connection, a personal anchor in the infinite ocean of creation. So Bayami gave them the first law, the law of kinship. He took a man and a woman and showed them the kangaroo, leaping with thunder in its legs. This is your kin, he imprinted upon their spirit. You are of the kangaroo dreaming. You will not harm it needlessly. You will protect the lands where it roats. Its story is your story. Its strength is your strength. When you see it, you see your ancestor. When you care for it, you care for yourself. To another family, he showed them the black cockatoo, its feathers the color of a coming storm. To another, the winding water serpent. To another, the patient witchetty grub, sleeping in the roots of the earth. Each clan, each family line was given a totem, a plant, an animal, a place. This was not a mascot. It was a sacred binding contract, a responsibility. The emu people were now stewards of the emu. The honey ant people were keepers of the honey ant. It was a web of connection that made every living thing a part of someone's family. It ensured that no part of creation would ever be forgotten or abandoned, because it was someone's direct, spiritual responsibility to care for it, to sing its songs, and to keep its stories alive. This was the foundation of society, a network of sacred duties, not to a distant god in the sky, but to the living, breathing world right under their feet. With their identity anchored, they now needed a map. Not a map of lines on paper, but a map of meaning. Bayami and the other creator beings had walked this world into existence. Their footsteps, their songs, their struggles, and their triumphs were not gone. They were etched into the very fabric of the land. Bayami taught the first people to hear the echoes. He taught them the song lines. Imagine a path, invisible to the eye, stretching for hundreds, even thousands of miles across the continent. This path is a song. As you walk it, you sing. Each verse you sing corresponds to a landmark you see. A particular rock formation is a verse about the Rainbow Serpent. A bend in the river is a chorus about the emu ancestor. A grove of trees is a stanza about the two Wadi Kutjara brothers. To travel, you didn't just walk. You sang the land into life around you. You followed the story. These songlines were a spiritual GPS, a library, and a hymnal all at once. A person who knew the songs could navigate across vast, featureless deserts, finding their way from one sacred waterhole to the next, because the song told them where to go. The songs were trade routes, tribal boundaries, and encyclopedias of natural knowledge. They contained information about which plants were edible, which were medicine, and which were poison. They were a legal code, detailing the laws of kinship, marriage, and ceremony tied to specific locations. The entire continent was a musical score, and by learning the songs, humanity learned not just how to survive, but how to live in harmony with the dreaming. The laws came next. Not 10 but thousands. A law for every occasion, for every relationship. How a man must treat his wife's mother. How a woman must treat her brother's son. How resources must be shared. How disputes must be settled. These were not arbitrary rules handed down from on high. They were pragmatic instructions for living, derived from the stories of the creator beings themselves. The laws were simply emulations of their perfect, eternal behavior. When the Goanna ancestor was greedy, disaster followed. The law then was to share. When the Cockatoo ancestor was boastful, he was humbled. The law then was to be modest. The stories were not just entertainment. They were the precedents of cosmic law. To break a law was to act against the very nature of the dreaming, to create discord in the fabric of reality, and to dishonor the ancestors who bled and sang this world into being. Bayami looked upon the people. They had their identity in the totems. They had their navigation and history in the songlines. They had their social order in the law. They knew who they were, where they were, and how they were meant to live. They understood that the land was not a thing to be conquered, but a story to be joined. His work, the great shaping, was finished. The time of creation was ending so that the time of humanity could begin. Bayami, and the other great spirits who had walked the earth, prepared to depart. But they did not go to some faraway heaven. That was not their way. Their way was to return to the source. Bayami gathered his last of his earthly power and ascended into the night sky, becoming a great star, forever watching over his children. The Rainbow Serpent, her work of carving the rivers complete, coiled herself into the deepest waterholes, her spirit remaining as the guardian of life's most precious resource. The other creator beings retreated into their creations. They became the rocks, the trees, the watering holes whose stories people would now tell. They did not leave the world. They became it. They were now forever present, not as walking figures, but as the living spirit within the land itself. And this is the secret that lies at the very heart of this story. The Dreamtime is not the past. It is not a creation myth in the way a modern mind understands it, a story of in the beginning. That is far too simple. The Aboriginal understanding of time is not a straight line, marching from yesterday to tomorrow. It is a deep, eternal, ever-present now. The dreaming or the dreaming is the foundational state of reality. It happened, it is happening, and it will happen all at the same time. When a person today paints a sacred design, they are not just making a picture. They are channeling the power of the dreaming. When they sing a songline, they are not just remembering a story. They are making the ancestor being walk that path again right now. The ceremony is not a commemoration. It is a recreation. It is the act of plugging back into the eternal engine of the world, maintaining its structures, and ensuring the sun will rise, the rains will fall, and the seasons will turn. What Bayami taught the first people, by the light of that first fire, was that they were not the inheritors of a finished world, but the eternal custodians of a creation that never ends. Their purpose was to tend to the stories, to sing the songs, to walk the paths, and through these sacred duties, to keep the very fabric of reality intact. This is one of the oldest, most continuous stories on planet Earth. A story that has been told and lived for over 60,000 years. It is a story not written in books, but on the vast breathing body of a continent. A story of gods who became the world, and a people who were given the profound and beautiful task of keeping their memory, their law, and their very being alive. It is the story of the Dreamtime, and it is a story that has no end.